So, today we're going to connect two stories that, on the surface, seem worlds apart. They're separated by oceans, by decades, but they're linked by one really powerful idea: the work of care. We're going to look at a small town's very public battle against disease, and then we'll step into the quiet, private world of a colonial home. Let's dive in.
Wow. Just read that line. He too answered the unstaying hand. It's from a local history of Rushford, Minnesota, and it's haunting, right? It's talking about a 10-year-old boy who died during a polio outbreak. You can just feel the helplessness in those words, this sense of a community facing something it just can't stop. This is a story about a public crisis, one that everybody saw, everybody felt, and everyone made sure to record.
And that really gets you thinking, doesn't it? When we look back at history, what do we focus on? It's usually the big, visible battles. You know, the epidemics, the wars, the economic crashes. But what about all the constant, unseen work that's happening in the background? The stuff that actually holds a society together. Let's keep that idea in our back pocket as we get into our first story.
All right, so let's dive in. Our first stop is Rushford, Minnesota. Thanks to a local history book, we get this incredibly detailed picture of the town's fight to build a real, formal system of medicine to combat all the diseases that were constantly threatening them. You can see it right here, the town's medical history laid out like a blueprint. It's marked by these clear, official milestones. We see the arrival of the first doctors, we know where they set up their practices, and we even see the tragedies that hit these very public figures. This is history as it's usually written, a formal record built on dates and names and official job titles.
And check this out. This is what I love. It makes the past feel so real. It's not just a name in a book, it's an actual advertisement. Dr. N. Allen, physician and surgeon. This was a public service, a business. It was a visible, official part of the town's structure. His work was meant to be seen.
And that visibility becomes absolutely critical when a crisis hits. You see a number like this, 8, just 8. But in a small town, that's not a statistic. That's your neighbor, your friend's kid, a classmate. This was a public siege, and it was documented in the newspapers, remembered as this collective trauma. It's the kind of history that always gets written down. But what about the histories that don't? Okay, now I want you to completely switch gears with me. We're going to travel halfway across the world to the islands of Vanuatu back in the colonial era. And here, the story of care isn't found in newspaper clippings about doctors. It's found in the memories of young women who worked as what they called house girls. This is Maylee's memory, and did you catch that? 10 or 11 years old, almost the exact same age as Burton Westby, the little boy in Rushford who died of polio. But her story isn't about some big public crisis. It's a story of private labor, of doing small work behind closed doors. Her life completely wrapped up with her expatriate employers.
Now, to really get what's happening here, we need to talk about this word, custom. It's a term for all the indigenous culture, the knowledge, the practices that were so often pushed aside during the colonial period. So this effort to record the stories of these house girls, it's part of a much bigger project to reclaim and value this custom.
Just look at this daily grind. It's this quiet, repetitive cycle of tasks. Wake up, make tea for the employers, set the table, wash the dishes, wash the laundry, and then go to school, only to come right back in the afternoon for more small work. This labor was absolutely essential to running the household, but it was almost completely invisible, totally unrecorded, just seen as part of the domestic background. Okay, so this is where it all comes together. Let's put these two worlds side by side. On one hand, you have the dramatic, public, recorded history of medicine in Rushford. And on the other, you have the quiet, private, remembered history of domestic work in Vanuatu. Both are stories about care, but they are told in completely different ways. And here it is, laid out plain and simple. In the public world, you've got these official, professional titles: physician, surgeon, veterinarian. These are recognized, respected professions. But in the private world, the roles are so often informal and feminized. Housegirl, mother, nurse. Their work is every bit as crucial, but it often doesn't come with a formal title or any kind of public recognition. I mean, just imagine this scene. It's a life or death situation. A doctor is performing this incredibly complex surgery on a kitchen table. This is the stuff of legends, you know? A heroic act that becomes a cornerstone of a town's history. It's a moment of intense, dramatic, and very visible intervention. Now, let's flip the coin. Meet Jocelyn. Her work, no single heroic act. It's a continuous, daily effort of just
Maintenance, cooking, cleaning, washing, day in and day out. And notice that detail. She didn't eat with them or sleep in their house. Her labor was essential, but she herself remained separate, unseen, and her story wasn't written down in any official book.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because even back in Rushford, things weren't always so black and white. Let's look at the story of Effie's Cottrell Home Hospital. This wasn't some sterile, intimidating building. It was literally a home that was also a hospital. It perfectly bridged that gap between public medicine and private care.
So why did everyone love this place? What made it so special? Well, get this. It wasn't just about the medical treatment. The mothers who went there raved about the great food and the wonderful hospitality. These are the values of the home, of domestic care brought right into a medical setting. It just goes to show that even in public health, that unseen work of making people feel cared for was incredibly valuable.
All right, so this leads us to the big question, the final piece of the puzzle. How do we end up with these two totally different kinds of stories? Well, it all comes down to how history actually gets made, what gets written down, and what has to be passed down through memory alone.
Take a look at this page from the Rushford history book. What do you see? It's packed, right? It's dense with text, advertisements, names, dates. This is a formal artifact, something that was compiled from written sources. This is history as a stable, documented record.
And even the credits tell you everything you need to know. It gives credit to academic journals like Minnesota Medicine. This history is built on other official histories, creating this chain of documentation that gives it authority and basically ensures it's going to survive.
But the stories from Vanuatu, totally different. There was no paper trail, no official documents. These stories existed only in memory. To get them, someone had to hold a workshop, to make a conscious effort to bring these women together so they could speak their experiences into existence and turn them into a historical record. This is history as living, spoken testimony. And that's exactly why this kind of work is so incredibly important. This quote says it all. The very act of recording these memories is an act of acknowledgement. It transforms these women from just being subjects of history into being its authors. It recognizes the importance of their unseen labor and their skill in telling their own stories.
So here we are, back where we started. But we're looking at things through a completely new lens, right? The history of Rushford's doctors and the history of Vanuatu's housegirls are both stories of care, and both were essential to their communities. One was written down as it happened, the other had to be carefully pulled from memory. And it just leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Who are the Effies, the Maylies, and the Jocelyn's in our own histories? And what unseen work is just waiting in the quiet corners of our own communities, ready to finally be remembered?